ain't.
Oh, yes, you are.
Oh, no, I ain't.
Oh, yes, you are.
Oh, no, I ain't.
Hello and welcome to the Hawk's Nest. Well, we've just crossed 1,000 subscribers on the channel, and I feel like I should acknowledge the fact that nearly half of that growth has happened in the last 30 days or so. This is tremendous. It's awesome. I couldn't have imagined for anything better. But I'm also very keenly aware that many of you have come to the channel and subscribed via the Great Seahawks Moments video series. I just want to assure all of you that I'm consistently working on new videos of this type. They just take a bit more time than these Hawk Nest episodes, about a month to a month and a half or so. I got to do the whole process as I'm a one-man band here on this channel. So I just ask for a little bit of patience with that. I'll try to get a new one out shortly. With that said, I thank all of you for subscribing. The growth this year has been amazing, and your guys' encouragement and support has been unfailing. With that said, let's dive on into this instant Monday Night Classic.
Hey, man, whatever it takes. Locked in, championship focus. One play at a time, dominate. Let's go celebrate in the end zone together. Let's go do this thing. Let's go, Hawks on three. 1, 2, 3, Hawks.
Well, that was certainly a game for the ages. I don't remember the last time myself I've been so entertained by a football game from the start to the finish. There were no moments of dullness or boring. It was just on the edge of your seat, high-intensity football, 100% all the way through. And the Seahawks started out really well here where Shaquille Griffin made an interception on the very first offensive play for the 49ers. Seemed like it might be Seattle's day, but then the officials came in with a very late, questionable flag on a defensive holding penalty, and this was followed up a couple plays later where there was a questionable defensive pass interference penalty. So it didn't appear that the officials, the referees, were going to be in the Seahawks' pocket on this day, but rather with the 49ers. And the 49ers took advantage of this. They were able to drive down the field. Their offense was very good to start the game, very efficient, running and passing. And they got up on Seattle 10-0 quickly. Seattle's offense wasn't able to do much. Everything was looking a little bit down at this point, like Seattle might just be overmatched by a better team. That was what it appeared as we may be going into this game that could be a potential happening. But then Jaron Reed went out and made what I would consider the play of the year for the Seattle Seahawks. Check this out. He comes in and not only gets the sack, but strips the quarterback of the ball. Jadeveon Clowney picks it up and scores, and you get a 10-0 game where San Francisco also has possession and looks like they might just be able to drive right back down the field again and get up by 3 scores. Instead, you get a swing of points that moves it back around to 10-7. Seattle's right back in play, and they utilize that momentum to drive forward and get up 21-10 at one point. Of course, San Francisco then works their way back into it, and that's part of what made this game an instant classic, in my opinion, is the back and forth nature of it. These were two very evenly matched teams, and the offense didn't have their best bullets today. Obviously, Russell played, I would say, Pro Bowl level, but maybe not at MVP level. And that was good enough to win the game, but this was really on the defense by and large. They really carried the load for the offense for the first time this season. It seems like Seattle's had to just outscore everybody coming into this game. But in this one, they locked things down. This looked a lot like the defenses of the past, the Legion of Boom defenses. We provided consistent pressure throughout, getting 5 sacks. Jadeveon Clowney was basically just living in the backfield. Obviously, Jaron Reed and Al Woods also provided some additional pressure. And the secondary looked simply just amazing. They were locking things down there very well. You had Quandry Diggs get his first interception as a Seahawk and his first appearance as a Seahawk, which is always nice to see. But as well, we could have had additional interceptions with Shaquille Griffin, Bobby Wagner, KJ Wright, Trey Flowers. All of them had their hands on a football at one time or another. And the secondary was also laying some hits. They were putting some hits out there on that 49ers receivers, and that stuff mounted. It built up. A lot of those drops later on in the game by those 49ers receivers were because of those early hard hits that they received. The same thing is true with Jimmy Garoppolo. A lot of that early consistent pressure that was in his backfield started to mount up as well, and you started to see him get a little bit of that happy feet that the quarterbacks can tend to get, where they start to see ghosts when there's nobody there. And that's what was happening to him as the game was ending up. So a phenomenal job by the defense to really tighten things in. If they can play anywhere near this level with as good as our offense should be, this team, again, has all the potential in the world to go take advantage of their Super Bowl hopes. As well, the number one reason this Jaron Reed play that I mentioned is the play of the year for the Seahawks is as follows. If Seattle had lost this game, and if they didn't get that turnover there, I think in a lot of ways San Francisco probably does drive down the field and at least score some additional points. And it's going to be very hard at that point for Seattle to come back from that many points down with that San Francisco defense able to just pin its ears back and know that Russell Wilson's going to have to now throw a ton to get back in the football game. You lose that game, you're all but guaranteed, if you make the playoffs, of having to go on the road, play 3 brutal road games against this tough NFC in order to get back to the Super Bowl. I think we can all agree that would have nearly been an impossibility as far as a task to pull off. We haven't seen them pull it off in any of the time throughout Russell and Carroll's history here. So the win still preserves the opportunity for you to take advantage of the fact that you can win this division, get that home field advantage throughout the playoffs and that first round bye, which we've seen in 2005, which we've seen in 2013, 2014, is absolutely monumental to potentially getting back to the Super Bowl. An amazing win today. I can't remember again a game that I thought was this entertaining from start to finish. This Seahawks team is one of the funnest ones I've had to watch in years. I think we've probably had 2 of the top 3 games in the NFL this season. I think that Rams game is right in there as well. So we're right there in the mix. Everything is there for the taking. Let's see what these Hawks can do.
I'm having so much fun watching this video from last night. I mean, the 49ers try to put their fullback and tight end on Jadeveon Clowney, and it's just pure chaos. That's all it is. I mean, it looks great on a chalkboard, but you can't put Dwelly and Juszczyk on him. He's going to come. Now, he's all over Garoppolo, and he can't get him to the ground. But his good friend and comrade, Quentin Jefferson, can. So he's happy about that. But he's just sick that he couldn't get the sack. So what does Quentin come over and do? CPR. Revive him. They need Clowney. They want to win the NFC West. That's it, Quentin. Give him a little CPR. Like, push 3, 4, 5 times. Push 5. Push 5 times, then give him some air.
On a day where the defense rose to the occasion, Jadeveon Clowney was an absolute difference maker out on the football field. He seemed absolutely unblockable at times, seemingly a man possessed. And what was most interesting to me about this game was that it felt like early on for the first 3 games of the season, he was having a similar impact. He was creating consistent pressure. He was stopping the run, which we both know is his forte, just kind of creating general havoc. And then the opposition seemed to recognize this. By about game 4, he was getting doubled, and quite a lot, to the tune of him being, coming into this game, the 3rd most doubled edge defender in the entire NFL. Well, what did the San Francisco 49ers decide to do differently? They got both of their starting tackles back. Longtime stalwart blindside protector Joe Staley, and then former top 10 pick Mike McGlinchey over on the right side. And they decided they would single up Clowney. They wouldn't provide any help to these tackles and make them take him on one-on-one. Well, he abused the 2 of them. It didn't matter which side of the field he was on, left or right. They both could not stop him at all. And he started out first with that patented bull rush move, pushing him right back into the quarterback, and then changed it up into that swim move to the inside that he likes to do, which is a great counter to the bull rush. It was awesome to see the full potential of what Clowney can unleash out onto a football field. And you heard many of the pundits afterwards talking about this, where he was sort of crowned as having the best defensive performance they had seen this season in this particular game. And I had to chuckle, because one of the things that I've been beating the drum about since I was begging for the Seahawks to trade for Clowney this offseason was the fact that you can't pay attention to just his sacks. And in this game, he only had 1 sack. How many times have you ever heard of a defensive player, a defensive lineman, having one of the great games of the year on the defensive side of the ball with only 1 sack? Well, the reason is because they can see him generating pressure at all times, him being back there consistently all over the place. And that is the story of Jadeveon Clowney. He is a defensive playmaker. He's not just a sack specialist. Sacks can sometimes be reliant on other players. Take, for instance, the fact that he's been doubled the amount of times that he's been doubled. Do you guys think that if he had a viable edge rusher over on the other side who might also occasionally command a double team, especially if the matchup dictated so, would not he have potentially probably more sacks? Yeah, probably. That's why it's very important with these players, especially defensive linemen that are rushing the passer, to pay attention to some of the ancillary stats, the pressures, the quarterback hits. What he's doing is you're watching him on a play-by-play basis. And on a play-by-play basis, Jadeveon Clowney is an absolute game wrecker, a defensive playmaker, the type of guy that I'm perfectly happy to sign to a contract extension. And I'm just going to say it. I'm perfectly happy giving Jadeveon Clowney the very same deal that Frank Clark just got this season from Kansas City, if not adding $1 million more for inflation. He is far and away a much better player than Frank Clark. You see it in his ability in the run game. Look at Kansas City this year, who is having a tremendous problem stopping the run. not Seattle, not on Clowney's edge, and he gives you that consistent pressure on play-by-play basis, which with Frank Clark, it's more of the splash play, right? He will show up here, show up there, get a cool couple stats for you, but he's not necessarily generating that consistent pressure that you do see from Jadeveon. So please sign this guy to this offseason. I'm certainly certain the Seahawks are going to do so, and it will be absolutely money well spent.
Garoppolo takes the snap, looks, throws, tip, it's picked up, going down the far side. It's going down the far side. Stops, comes back inside, knocked off his feet. It's Diggs, I beg your pardon. It's 37.
Seahawks fans got their first glimpse of newly acquired safety Quandry Diggs from the Detroit Lions in this game, and all I've got to say is I want to see some more. He looks like a real player back there, right from the opening get-go, where San Francisco's first completed pass, the receiver's going across, going down to the ground. In comes Diggs like a buzzsaw, just gives him a little bit of chin music right across his bow. And you see the receiver freak out here. I'll show it on the thing where he freaks out and starts pointing at his head, trying to get the official to draw a targeting penalty. And I think this is important because he came back in a quarter later and laid a real lick on a receiver going across the middle who was kind of bobbling a ball. McDougal hit a guy and lit him up right as he was going out of bounds. And I think those hits, a lot like how Clowney's pressures eventually caused Jimmy Garoppolo to get some real happy feet as we got into the end of this game. You saw those receivers and some of those drop passes we saw in the fourth quarter and overtime really, I think, come about by some of those early good solid shots that they took by those safeties of the Seahawks. And Diggs was right at the forefront of that. As well, he came back in later on in the game and got a tipped interception, which was just opportunistic and exactly what we saw on the tape of him coming from Detroit, where he is he'll pick a ball off if it's there to pick. He'll jump a route here and there, but he's an opportunistic player. You see that in him. He's got great instincts. As well, there was a play where Matt Breida was getting outside of contain on a particular run, and it was a play really reliant on the free safety coming in to kind of save it, contain the big play down, keep it from being a touchdown. This is a lot what you used to see Earl Thomas do when he was here, and he did just that. He got Breida out of bounds, kept the play down to a great contain. I got to say, there was times here where he really did look a little bit like Earl Thomas light. And I had to go back and look at his combine stats to see, was he as quick and fast as Earl? And that's where I'm seeing this from. And it's not. He ran like a 4.56 as opposed to Earl's sub 4.4. He wasn't particularly super quick, doesn't have long arms, only runs about 5.9.5. But what he does have is football speed. There are those guys you can put out on a track meet and they're going to be really fast. You throw pads on them and they just suddenly become significantly slower. Then there's other guys who might not run super fast on a track, but you put them on a football field, you throw the pads on, you put a helmet on them, and they're just a little bit faster than everyone else out there. And that appears the case with him. He's got that little extra gear like Earl had, that where he goes just a little bit quicker than everybody else. Maybe it's just instincts, maybe it's just tenacity. Whatever it is, we've got a fantastic player in the secondary, and him and McDougal as a pairing is going to be very good as we move forward because our corners are rounding into shape, and now if those safeties are playing at almost a sub-Pro Bowl level back there, now suddenly you've taken a secondary where at the start of the season it wasn't the greatest component of your defense, and it becomes potentially a growing strength. So love the acquisition. Once again, John Snyder deserves the general manager of the year, and if he doesn't get it this year, the absolute fix is in, I tell you.
Yes, sir. Monday Night Football. No other place greater. We already know what time it is.
Yeah! Coleman empties out to the right sideline. Empty backfield for Garoppolo. He stands strong. Gets hit.
Last week, I was a little bit rough on Jaron Reed and what I perceived as some of his lack of effort in that Tampa Bay Buccaneer game, and also some of the minimal production we've seen from him in the 3 games since he's gotten back off of suspension. Well, Jarran answered the bell in a big-time way in this game. He was very impactful. He registered 4 tackles, a sack and a half, had a pass defense where he knocked a ball down to the defensive line. And then as well, of course, he was the key member, the key component of this play that I am going to, again, maintain is going to turn to potentially be the play of the year for the Seattle Seahawks, in how it turned the tide and in how it turned their fortunes. He was really good in this game, and it was awesome to see because as I spoke about earlier, Clowney's going to get doubled now as we move forward, if not more so, just as much as he had been prior to this 49er game. That means a lot of guys on that defensive line are going to get singled up and have opportunities to go hunt. And you saw it on that play with the strip sack where he was one-on-one with the guard and he just ate him right up, got right back to the quarterback, which is a lot of what we saw last season with Jarran. This is a very encouraging development because I'm going to maintain we don't need this defensive line to become the Legion of Boom defensive line in order for us to win a Super Bowl. That's the benefit of having a spectacular offense. And with the potential of what Gordon adds into play there as you get Dixon back, as that line just gets more comfortable and comfortable together, I really feel like they're just going to continue to elevate their game. So the defense just has to hold the water. They just got to keep it from being an onslaught, keep them to field goals, get the occasional turnover, get the occasional sack. And to do that, we need somebody else on that defensive line other than Clowney to be generating pressure. And Jaron Reed is the prime candidate to do so. So an awesome game by Jaron Reed and absolutely fantastic to see.
He's going to half roll right side, still looking, goes back inside, ball is tipped up as a goal. It is! It's Clara back in the end zone by Hollister! Touchdown! Seahawks!
Russell Wilson just started his 122nd straight game at quarterback for the Seattle Seahawks. And while this is an ongoing franchise record and an impressive one at that, the interesting part to note here is that one of two active players ahead of him on that list, one Matt Stafford, just went down to an injury this last week and missed his game. Only Phillip Rivers remains, and Phillip certainly appears as though he'll probably be retiring within the next year or two, let's say. So Russell will continue to rise up those ranks of consecutive games. And while I don't know if he'll ever reach Brett Favre's consecutive game record, the interesting part for me to look at here is that you look at the young quarterbacks around the league who have just arrived on the scene, and all these guys go down to injuries very early on. Look at Sam Darnold, who got mono for 4 weeks, or Patrick Mahomes, who had his knee dislocated on a very innocuous sneak right up the middle. How many times have we seen Tom Brady run that same play and never get injured? And then you've got Russell Wilson here, who with all of his scrambling back and forth, all of his extending the play, all of those, let's call them sub-illegal shots he's taken from defenders over the years, has somehow managed to get in there game in and game out, and not just play, but play at a super high level. It's been amazing to watch. And while you can prescribe some of it to good luck or good fortune, and some of it certainly can be ascribed to Russell's devotion and dedication to preparing his body throughout the week, I think another large part of this is the fact that Russell is just one hell of a tough SOB.
At the 45, waits for the snap. Michael Dixon puts it down. That kick is away. And that kick is good! The Seahawks win! From 42, the Seahawks in overtime. Let's go!
The Eagles loom next. This is going to be a very tough game for the Seattle Seahawks. The Eagles are a very complete team. They're playing for something as they're right in the mix there for the division with Dallas Cowboys. So I'd expect this to be another game that's going to go right down to the wire. Why should we expect anything else with the Seattle Seahawks team? For the Seahawks, the way they attack here, I think they're going to have a little bit of a hard time running the ball into Brandon Graham and Fletcher Cox and the likes. But that secondary has holes. I would look for a game that's going to be very similar to the Tampa Bay Buccaneer game, where Russell's going to have a lot of places to throw out there, especially with the ascent of Josh Gordon, with Hollister rounding back into shape, and potentially even getting Ed Dixon back in line here. So if Seattle can just put the points up on the board, I think they can overcome whatever the Eagles can do offensively, because I would expect the Eagles to move the ball. They've got an offensive-minded coach who understands how to attack this type of formation. Wentz is a very good quarterback. They've got a good mix of run and pass on that team. They've got just enough playmakers on the outside to make them dangerous. So I'd expect them to do well against our defense overall. Also, obviously, if Jaron Reed and Jadeveon Clowney give you any of the type of game they gave you this last week, then you could potentially dominate in this game. But it's on the road. It's a 10 a.m. start. Screw you, NFL, for giving us another 10 a.m. game. That's 5 on the year. I can't remember in my memory the last time they made us go that many times over to the East Coast and try to play that early on. But this Seattle team is 5-0 in the road. They've answered that bell every single time. So I'm not going to get dragged down by it. So we'll see how it goes. It's going to be a fun game to watch. It's a very competitive opponent. We've got a hellacious schedule as we go through the rest of this year. Seattle's going to have to earn it if they want that first round bye. But they have answered it so far, so I'm not going to believe anything else until I see differently. Thank you, as always, to everyone out there for watching. That 1,000 subscriber mark that we hit has just got my jaw dropped. I've been just kind of floating around on air as I realize how quickly this channel continues to grow. Thank you to all of you for doing that and showing your support. As well, again, any comments that you would like to get about how we can improve this and make this a better Hawks Nest episode, please put them down below. I am always listening, always looking, and usually always responding, depending on how busy I am. Thank you very much for watching. And there's got to be one other thing you guys do not forget, all right? Just keep one other thing in mind. Go Hawks.